Welcome to Be a Blessing with Mitch and Windi, a no-holds-barred guide to being the best you can be so that you can be a blessing to your family, friends, and everyone you meet. Be a Blessing is about life, from parenting to building a business and building yourself. Mitch and Windi will cover it all. So buckle up and prepare to get uncomfortable, because growth only comes from the other side of a challenge.
Welcome to episode 10 of Be a Blessing with Mitch and Windi. So today we are going to have a continuation of episode 8, which was about the things that worked in our marriage. And if you go back, if you haven't watched episode 8 was right around the time of our anniversary. We had just made 17 years of marriage. And so we took the opportunity to talk about some things that really worked well for us over those 17 years. So we did each top 3 things to do in marriage. So today we're going to continue that conversation.
We're going to flip the coin and talk about 3 things that we don't do that helps aid in the success of our marriage.
So things that we've learned that don't work, or we've seen or observed that don't work. And so we're going to give each of our own top 3 what not to do in a marriage. Frank, quick question. Producer Frank's here as always, making this look really nice and sounding good. Are we able to put a link or put something that if they haven't watched episode 8, that they could click on it? Yes. Awesome. So Frank's going to have that up there right now. If you haven't watched episode 8, the what to do, or the 3 things or 6 things total to do in marriage, go watch that, then come back and watch this one, or vice versa. So today, what not to do.
Just a disclaimer. I mean, don't have this unrealistic perceived notion that we have a perfect marriage, that we got it all figured out, that it's just always 100% hunky-dory, because it's not. We can snort, snot, and tear up and fight with the best of them.
Yeah, and some of the things that we're going to talk about, what not to do, we've done.
So we've learned from experience.
Which is why we're saying don't do these things.
This is what I'm saying. We failed our way to success. There's a lot of things that we've done wrong, but are mature enough to correct these things, or still are working through them.
So not all the things that we'll mention we did, but some that we have.
And we just stuck it to 3. There's a whole list.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of things not to do.
But for the sake of time, we're just squeezing it into 3.
Yep, so it's, I'm going to let you go first, ladies first. So number one thing, and maybe it's not, is it? So I don't think I'm going to put a value on this is the number one most important.
No.
Yeah.
This is just writing them down.
Yeah.
This is not the most important thing, or it has no value as far as importance.
Okay. Number 1.
So the Bible talks about leaving and cleaving. So with that being said,
you can't just say that and not explain. I mean,
well, I'm going to explain it by my don't.
Like, there's probably somebody like, what the hell is she talking about? Leaving and cleaving in the Bible.
Okay, so this is what I'm saying. I do not allow my family, more so my parents, to dictate decisions and how my marriage is run. We never have. I have married Mitch, and that's the thing with when he asked for my parents' permission to marry me, they said, okay, Mitch, you want to marry her? You're going to also get her health insurance. You're going to get her car insurance. You're going to pay for every single thing as her husband. You will be her provider. We will not pay for anything anymore, which is kudos to my parents.
Yeah, good job.
Because they released that responsibility onto my husband. So I do not allow my parents to make decisions for us. With that being said, my parents do not financially support us. This is hard to hear, but when your parents pay for everything for you, your spouse, and your family, it gives them a say-so on how things are spent and decisions that are made.
Definitely.
That takes it away from us.
Yep.
And what that does is forms a wedge of contention between us.
Yep.
So we do not allow my parents, even though, we've been married 17 years, that's long gone, that's history, to do anything for us.
Yeah. And my parents either, by the way.
Yeah.
So neither one of our parents has ever been a source of division in our
Never,
marriage.
not once. They've always been super respectful.
Yep.
Never been nosy, never pry. They never ask questions if they don't want the answer.
Didn't even give unsolicited advice.
Never.
Now, we're always available for us to ask advice, but didn't try to pry their way. So you would phrase that, number one is...
Do not...
let the parents divide.
Let the parents be the invisible third spouse.
Yeah.
So I would say that. It's important. And I'm going to say, it's important to say it again because I know y'all are watching. Thank y'all for setting those healthy boundaries. Thank you for releasing me to be his full-on responsibility financially and every other way, because you did us a bigger favor than you realize. And that probably came from years of experience and maturity. I just want to thank my parents for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Now, with that being said, I also want to clarify, if we ever got into a place where we were in a bad situation, let's say I was sick or I had cancer or whatever, and we needed something, financing help, they would completely be there.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't want that to sound like they
Yeah, they've been generous.
Yeah.
But they didn't pay our bills.
Yeah, they didn't pay our bills.
Yeah.
They,
Early on, they definitely don't now.
Because they told us,
Yeah.
if you can't pay your own bills, then you don't need to get married.
Yeah. So number one, don't let your parents divide your marriage.
Right.
Awesome. Number two,
do not degrade your spouse in front of your family.
or in front of anybody.
In front of anybody. Yeah, anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to jump in on your...
No, I'm glad you clarified that, but do not...
I mean, you can degrade them in public, but just not in front of your family.
No, in front of anybody.
Yeah.
That your spouse is your number one person in your life. You're going to protect them, protect their reputation, their character, their ego at all costs.
All right, so let's get real here, since we don't want people to think we're pristine and above all this. Has there been a time either one of us has...
Oh yeah, I mean
done
we'll
that?
make.
There's
been many a times that you've been the brunt of my jokes.
Okay, say, what was it? Top of your mind.
I don't know.
You don't remember?
I don't
know. I'm sure there's a time I did it that you remember that. You're like, remember that time you did this?
Yeah, no, but I mean, I don't try to think about that, but I remember there would be times that you were the brunt of the joke, and it was just for laughing effects, but you didn't think it was that funny. And I gotta be self-aware enough to know that, like, yeah, Wendy, don't be a douche.
Yeah.
That wasn't cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you made a comment about your family. Sometimes it's easy. I don't know. It's easier to be that way, maybe with family. Maybe that's why you phrased it that way. You get a little more comfortable. With your family. Yeah,
because you feel like they know you as well. So if you say something that it would be easy for them to overlook the brunt that I'm bringing in that angle, because they know the real you. Even then, that's not okay.
Yeah, and sometimes it's easy to make fun of each other with the family because everybody gets the joke, maybe.
Yeah, everybody gets the joke, or that's how you show love. You just gently roast each other.
Yeah, I don't know, but there's apparently though, and they're up for debate. Like, I see a lot of people on social media who post things like, "If you can't handle my roasting, I don't want it."
Honey, you didn't want it 4 men ago.
I'm just saying, apparently that's a thing. Frank, have you seen that on social media? Hey, if you can't handle my roasting, and like, I don't want it, or it's like, I don't want it either. I don't like being roasted and constantly being degraded. Not like a good joke. I mean, sometimes we make jokes. Let that be with
your boys at Walk-On's bar,
yeah.
But not with your significant other. Yeah, come on, man. Yeah. That's where you go to get built up.
Yeah, definitely. So it's and I think we talked about in that What to Do podcast, we talked about a book called Love and Respect, which we highly recommend. And in that book, that's from a male perspective, being degraded is a huge lack of disrespect. So it affects a man that way. And then when it comes to a woman, that is a very unloving thing to do, to degrade her publicly. Mm-hmm. So you want to cause some tension, whether you think it's cool or not. I just promise you, that's, even if you don't believe it, that's going to cause
a
some divide.
Recipe for snapbacks.
Yeah, so good one there. And you had made a point, and I said we wouldn't talk about it. I do think it's worth mentioning how you treat your spouse. Your children are watching.
Yeah,
and
how you talk to your spouse, even in the midst of a very deliberate argument, or if you're challenging each other on something. But how you do that is how they're learning how to talk to their significant other.
Yeah.
So if you were always barking orders at me and you never asked me or never thanked me for doing anything, most likely my children will talk to me the very same way.
Yeah. And specifically when it comes to the degrading part,
Yes.
that kind of thing, if they see that that's normal or that, to them, okay, then when I get into that relationship, I'm going to do that. Potentially, not always, but a high probability. So, number one, don't let your parents divide your marriage. Number two, don't degrade your spouse publicly or privately.
Yeah. And third of all, ladies, let your husband give him the opportunity and do not prevent him from leading your family. That God has made him and wired him in a specific way that he wants to lead. He wants to protect and provide and make good decisions, but include you on them. I've been around a lot of people that they take that from their husband, and I don't know what it is. Maybe he's made some poor decisions in the past that really cost them somehow, but they don't hand that to their husbands. And that is a part of the respect thing, is giving him the reins to lead the family. And I think that honestly, when he's leading and making the decision, you're going to find yourself in a healthy, happier place as well. A good example, well, this is probably not the best example, but something I was thinking about when I have a friend that will not trust and let her husband stay home with their sick children. She will call in 400 days out of the 365 available days of the year to stay home with their kids when they're sick. She even said, I don't trust him to take care of them. And it blows my mind because it's a shared responsibility. You're in risk of getting fired because you've wasted all your available days. You can't go on vacation. And if you don't trust your husband to take care of a kid with a little fever and you could call every few hours, check on him, sister, you didn't have any business having kids with him.
Everybody, all 19 people watching this who are friends with you and female, are like, is she
that
talking like, is that
me?
me?
No.
If the shoe fits.
Look, stop, lace it up. All them corny memes. But no, it's, y'all don't, I'll keep that private. But it just, how would you feel if I didn't allow you to be able to fill in that and help me take care of our sick kids?
First of all, disclaimer, I did not put her up to saying number 3 is let a man lead. Just want to, that was totally on her own accord. So
This is true.
Make that disclaimer. How would I feel? I think I would be annoyed by it. I mean, I don't know. I think by nature, once I had kids, I became a nurturer to some extent when it came to them. It wasn't always that way, but once I had kids, like the switch flipped on for me.
It was innate.
But probably what happens with most men thinking in that situation, they're probably relieved. Now, is it a good thing? I don't think it's a good thing, because at some point you're going to need to probably be able to be comfortable taking care of your child. And if you never get that opportunity and that experience to be in that scenario, you're taking something away from your fatherhood, from your being a parent. Like I think the spouse that's, whether it's the female or the male, the spouse that maybe potentially doesn't trust the other one with the child and the one that is always doing it, is really robbing the other spouse of that opportunity to grow as a parent.
Exactly. You don't have that tool belt, in your tool belt for in case, what if that spouse is no longer there?
Yeah.
And you're left with all these kids who are sick now and you don't know what to do.
Or what happens, when you have grandkids and, your son or your daughter, whoever it is, comes to you and you never had that opportunity to have that experience. You can't even give them advice on how to manage that. Or if they need you to take care of the sick grandbaby. Well, hell, I didn't even take care of my own sick kids. I don't know how to do this.
So we took a very small thing, an example, and we just talked about it a lot. But talking about leading is, women, understand that your man, if he's a good-intentioned man, if he's good-intentioned, you wouldn't have married him if you didn't think he was good-intentioned. If he's going to be leading your family and making these decisions, especially financial decisions, he always is thinking about from the angle of respect. He's going to include you on this decision. Understand, it's not going to be this caveman beating your chest and I don't care what you have to say, I'm making this decision whether you like it or not. If he's a good-intentioned man, he will lead you well. You have to trust him.
Yeah, just for the record, we're not saying or promoting poor leadership, where you do what I say, woman. You have no say.
That's not
it's
leadership.
That's not leadership.
Not even leadership.
No, so it's not that. It's not, and there's a lot of
blurry lines
when it comes
think.
well, and how people have used the Bible over the years to dominate and quiet or hush women, and that's not what we're saying. It should be a included discussion. And then, the leadership part where the husband's going to make the decision. And sometimes there's decisions, I make a decision to say, hey, I want you to make this decision. Mm-hmm. So that's part of being a leader as well, is allowing other people to make decisions.
Well, Wendy, I feel like you're better in this area.
Yeah.
What do you think? Well, ultimately, you know what, Wendy? I'm going to give this over to you. I trust you. You make the decision. Just let me know what you decide.
Yep. So that's the kind of leadership we're speaking about.
Yep.
All right, so Wendy's things not to do. Don't let the parents divide the relationship. Number 2, don't degrade your spouse. Number 3, don't prevent the male from leading, your husband from leading.
I just left you at 4.5 minutes to tell us your 3.
Well, mine are not as good as yours, so we'll blow right through them. My number 1 not to do is, and again, these aren't ranked in value, it's just as I thought of them. Number 1, don't flirt with anyone who's not your spouse. Right. You want to have a long, healthy, happy relationship. I think it's important you only flirt with that person you're married to. No flirting allowed.
No flirting allowed. But in today's society, there's a lot of people that take your kindness as flirting.
Potentially.
No, I'm just a kind person. I'm not hitting on you.
Yeah. And you have to be aware of that. I think if that person is that way, then maybe you change how you communicate. I'm not saying don't be kind, but or if they come back with some flirty thing, shut it down.
Shut it down in a way where there is no question.
Yeah.
No question at all.
So don't flirt. There was a joke for years that I side hug Mitch. I did church work for about 10 years prior to getting into insurance. And so in the church world, it's hug somebody, it's just kind of part of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of that culture, and that's great. People need to be hugged. It's good to get hugs at church because that's your church family. But I was always out there just side hugging everybody. Hey, how's it going? And a big part of that for me is I'm an introvert by nature, but B, the second part is I never wanted there to be anything taken the wrong way. I don't know. So, I don't care who you were, you got the side hug. And that was kind of my way of, obviously there's many ways to not flirt, but in that situation, and look, there was never any question. The side hug prevented any question of anything, always. So I think it gets a little dicey with social media and all these other avenues. Flirting now is not, or texting. Flirting now is not just in interaction with, in person. There's so many ways to flirt, and it's important that you don't do it, even if your spouse is unaware of it. Obviously, don't flirt. That's kind of degrading to me if you're flirting with somebody in front of me, obviously. And I recently saw a story where that was happening and it really upset the other person in the relationship. But don't flirt, obviously, whenever it's, the person's not around. Just shut that thing down. That's like the gateway drug to, unfaithfulness, is flirting. So number 1 for me is do not flirt. Number 2, do not bring up the past. The past is in the past for a reason. And if you're still together, no matter what happened in the past, the reason you're still together now, hopefully, is because whatever happened back then should no longer be present, right?
It should have already been dealt with.
It's dealt with.
And now it's done. Move way past that.
Leave the past in the past. I think sometimes, and there's many ways that this comes out, we don't argue a ton, fortunately. We get snippy and we, have poor attitudes and whatever, but we don't have like these major blowout arguments. We've had a few of them over the years. But some folks do, and that's okay. But what's important, one of the things I've learned over the years about marriage is if you're going to fight, fight fair. Mm-hmm. And fighting fair is if we're having a fight, we're only fighting over what's currently happening. Like if I did something to piss you off right in this moment, then this is what we're talking about, not the 14 other things.
14 years ago.
14 years ago. We don't bring all those things back into that conflict. We're only dealing with what just happened and nothing else. You want to make a conflict really unproductive, bring in the past.
Yeah.
And then it just, well, you always, and you remember that time, and it's
you
like,
never, and,
yeah.
and then now you're just arguing to nowhere.
Yeah, and then it just
getting
turns
nowhere.
Yeah. Who can win the argument at that point? It's not about conflict resolution.
Everybody loses.
Yeah, it's about who's right.
Yeah.
Or who can win. So do not bring up the past. Has there ever been a situation with us where, I can't think of a time where we brought up the past, but has it ever been a time that sticks out in your mind?
No. No.
But I think
arguing's so exhausting. Like, just say what you got to say. I'm ready to move past it because I don't have the energy.
Yeah.
I just don't want to dwell there.
Yeah. And I think here's another important part of it too, though. Individually, in your own mind, don't bring up the past. I'm sometimes guilty of that.
Oh, yeah.
Where if Wendy does something, then it triggers something in my brain. Well, she did it this time, she did it that time. And then no, man. Don't bring up the past. Whether it's in communication with your spouse, or don't bring up the past within your own self, within your own mind, your own thoughts, because you're just opening up opportunities for you to get angry about something that should have already been dealt with. So Frank, don't bring up the past. We're at 20 minutes. Number three, don't neglect your spouse. Now that's very generalized, okay? Mm-hmm. But listen, it's so important to make this point. Don't neglect your spouse. For so many marriages, the spouse is the last one that gets any attention, when they should be the first one that gets the
going
attention.
Back to 2 episodes ago,
Yeah.
we were talking about how your spouse comes first before anybody else.
So this is kind of the flip side of that. So many spouses just neglect each other. Mm-hmm. Because here's why: we get comfortable. We said till death do us part, so I can make sure everybody else is good. They're not going to leave me. I can not take care of their needs. I cannot be there for them. They're here for the long haul. And what happens? Well, what do you hear so many people say? We just fell out of love. We just became friends. We were just roommates. And listen, the reason that happens is because you've neglected each other. Love takes work.
Effort.
It is
energy.
Effort. It takes a lot of energy and effort, especially the longer you go. You have to continue dating. You have to continue communicating, doing things for each other that make you feel like you're in love.
Well, love's a verb.
Yeah, definitely. So do not neglect your spouse, okay? I don't know. There's so many ways that we could talk about that, but it's so important. And here's why. If you neglect your spouse, just know that somebody is going to show them attention somewhere else.
And appreciate them. In the wrong way.
And at some point, that spouse is, and it's not right. I'm not saying this is right, but this is what happens. If you're not taking care of your spouse's needs, somebody else somewhere probably is going to give them attention that they're craving, and at some point their affections and attention is going to be shifted away from you. Mm-hmm. Prevent that by giving each other the things that you need. Don't neglect your spouse. And I'll leave it at that. We're at 23 minutes. So thank you for checking in. Before we go, Wendy, we always do this. What's one thing you could leave our 14 viewers and listeners of value today?
I thought about this when we were starting podcasts, and it was so fantastic, and it just...
Okay, so no value today. Hopefully there was value in the six things we discussed.
I wanted to say, that's what it was. But anyways, it's just... you get out of it what you put into it.
Yeah, and we tell you 6 things to not put into it. So please heed our advice. We're 17 years in. Hopefully we get 17 more.
And then 17 after that.
And then 17 after that. Thanks for tuning in. Producer Frank, you're awesome as always. Hey, if this was valuable to you, if you found anything that was worthwhile, please share the podcast. Share the YouTube video. Become a subscriber. Like the YouTube or like the Facebook page. So have a great day. Be a blessing, everybody.